All right, welcome everybody. Happy Tuesday. I know we're all excited to dig into this panel around offshoring and really how we compete in the talent marketplace today. We have a great panel, which I'm going to introduce here in just a second. As you're jumping in, let me know where you're calling in from. You're going to have to type it in the Q&A. Let me know. I'm sitting in a very sunny, very tropical Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was snowing last week, so of course it's 55 degrees and sunny today. Everybody in Pittsburgh is wearing shorts outside, and we think we're living in the Bahamas right now. So let me know if that's where you're calling in from. And we needed the sun for any football fans. Oh, it's so sad on Sunday. And then we have all these terrible matchups coming up. So let me know. Type in the Q&A where you're calling in from. I see a hand raised. Just type it in. Let me know that you can see the panel. There should be 5 of us and that you can hear me. And if you can't, if you just see my mouth moving, type into the chat. Let me know. Okay, so Wyoming, India, Utah, fantastic. Honesdale, PA. I don't know if that means you're for the Eagles or the Steelers. We'll just pretend it's the Steelers. Great. Well, I'm excited to dive in. Pakistan. Wow, we got a lot of people calling in. Switzerland. Wow, this is probably just from the start the most globally attended audience that we've received so far. So very exciting. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to do a quick intro of myself. This is not going to be very slide heavy, but thought it would make sense to do a quick round of intros for everybody. So before we kind of go through the room here, my name's David Cristello. I'm the founder and CEO of Jetpack Workflow. We help firms standardize their processes, automate things like recurring deadlines, and track all your client work so nothing falls through the cracks. We're also our big content creators, as you can imagine, doing this panel. So we're doing the Growing Your Firm podcast, where we interview guests every other week, and then we run panels like this or a webinar every single month. That said, I'm not going to give everyone justice by kind of reading out the blurb I have. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out for a second. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. We'll go around the panel. Laurence, you're immediately to my right for me. So Laurence, if you can quickly introduce yourself, then we'll go Tammy, Amanda, and Dave, and then we'll dive into some sample questions.
Sounds good. So I'm Laurence Whittam, founder and managing partner of Impact Global Solutions. I'm an outsourcing expert, so I work with firms and help them along making sure they actually have a strategy in place, making sure they understand what the journey could look like, whether they're going to India, the Philippines, whether they're using domestic staffing. And I put out a lot of content as well around education in that topic.
All right, thanks for joining us, Laurence. Tammy, you mind giving a quick intro of yourself?
Hi, my name is Tammy Little, and I am the founder and CEO of FTC Group, LLC, Ghost Crew Incorporated, and Summit Accounting Partners. And we provide accounting, HR, and operational support to companies in various industries, including cannabis, construction, and real estate development.
Great. And how big is your offshoring team right now?
We currently have 2 and are looking to probably hire 1 to 2 more.
Fantastic. All right, Amanda.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here with you today. My name is Amanda Owens, and I'm the firm administrator for Badger CPA. I'm in charge of the ministry for the firm, along with the HR and the IT. I've been at Badger for just about 5 years, and we've been working with team members from the Philippines for almost that full 5 years. We currently have 22 team members, all based in the Philippines, plus our US staff. But I love working with each one of them. And I even got to go to the Philippines 2 years ago to spend time with everyone. And I'm just looking forward to the next time I get to go. So yes, I'm happy to be here and just happy to contribute to the conversation.
Yeah, fantastic. And Dave, do you want to round us out with a quick intro of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hey everybody. I'm Dave Olsen. I'm the founder and CEO of Nimble and Nimble Staffing. We started Nimble about 7 years ago, full service cloud accounting, accounting, tax, finance, and all that. And we built a Philippines team to support that company. We have about 40 people now directly for that company. And then while we built 2 offices there, we had other accounting firms mainly ask if we could hire people for them since we had the infrastructure there. So we started a separate company, Nimble Staffing, where we place people from the Philippines with other accounting firms.
All right, fantastic. Well, thanks for joining us. And what I was telling, the panelists before we hit record and we got in this real session, I said, look, we have some questions people pre-submitted. We'll definitely go through those. We had a LinkedIn post. We had dozens of questions and comments. We put it on the registration form. We're definitely going to go through a couple. But the beauty of being live is we get to prioritize your question. So if you already have a question, start typing it in right now. If one of the panelists say something, you're like, oh, I wish we could double click into that and zoom in, type it into the Q&A. We're going to try to go through as many questions as we can. Now with kind of the topic we're going through and having a panel, that typically means we get like 6 questions for the for the hour. So if you have one, please ask it. We also are going to record this. If somebody says something, you're like, oh, what was that? What was that thing they said? We're going to send out the recording, but you can also type it in the Q&A. If we did miss something, somebody on our team will try to follow up with the resource if one was mentioned. All right. So having said that, I do have a list of questions that are coming in advance. And so let's go with one. I'm going to start with a pretty broad one, and then maybe we'll dig in as we go. How can firms identify potential outsourcing partners? And I'm going to treat this as, how do you vet potential outsourcing partners? How do you know maybe the good ones versus the not so good ones? And again, I told the panel, I said, look, not everybody's going to get every question. I think for this one, we're probably just going to go around the horn of this one. This might be one of those one rare occasion of like how you're vetting the right partner, or how you're vetting, in Dave's case, kind of building it up from scratch and assessing the talent. I'm going to start with Laurence because you've seen so many different agencies, and then we'll kind of jump from there.
Sure. So I go around, I do that. That's part of what I do in terms of vetting a lot of the vendors that are out there. And what I ask a lot of firms to do first off is to look internally and really have a plan as to what is their overall goal for doing it, right? And what are the services they're looking to do? Because a lot of firms tend to just start talking to vendors straight away, and they don't necessarily even know what direction they want to go in, which means that they can quite easily then just go be sold to essentially and go with the wrong vendor who doesn't necessarily have the right experience, right? The right types of people on board with them, or hasn't done the type of model that you really want. So, sort of core things to think about is, what model do I really want, right? Do I want to look at full-time employees who are really like my employees, or do I care less about that and really care about the work that's being done and just want projects to be done? Is my workflow consistent, right? Or is it quite sporadic during certain seasons, right? And then to break that down and say, okay, now let's look at the geography and, okay, does that geography, whether it's India or the Philippines or South America, do they have the talent I need in order to accomplish that? So those are sort of the 2 main factors that I think every firm needs to sit back and really think about first before they even start to talk to vendors in a lot of cases. Um, and again, I want, there's lots more, but I would say those are the core things that I like to have firms think about themselves before they even start talking to anybody.
Just a quick follow-up, Laurence, for you, just to land at home. What does this sound like on a silver platter? Like, so, you can have a recent example or a real example of a client coming to you and saying, I don't know, is it, I want somebody full-time in business tax prep that does intake preparation. Like, how specific should they be? Can you give us an example of what that looks like when somebody comes to you with this phrase? You're like, oh, this is a slam dunk. Like, I know exactly where to go and exactly what to do.
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's generally not that, because a lot of firms have just don't know what they don't know. So they're like, okay, I really don't know what type of talent I can get in these different places and what I should be looking for. But that's where it's, again, being a bit more self-reflective of, why am I doing it and what am I doing it? Like, what type of work do I really need to get done, right?
Got it.
And it's start basic, right? And get an experience, because there's a lot of things that go into it, right? There are cultural nuances to working with somebody internationally, right? There are different communication problems that can come up. So start basic, right? And then start to get into more detailed work in a lot of cases, rather than jumping and saying, let me go and invest in all this straight away. It'll make your life a little bit easier in a lot of cases.
Got it. Amanda, when and you've certainly grown the team, it sounds like, to a pretty sizable number. How did you go through the process early on of trying to vet the right offshoring partner?
Yeah, first it was all based on word of mouth, just what other accounting firms had already been doing. I would definitely encourage you to just use this panel or other people that are attending just to learn best practices, what's working well, what's not working well. I definitely would recommend interviewing or checking out several different companies just to see what different companies are doing differently. But yeah, I think talking to other accounting firms is a great place to start. I know that when we first started, we really wanted a company that already had a large footprint, had already put their processes in place. But now that we've been doing this a while, we kind of know what the processes should be. And so I think it's okay to branch out into smaller BPOs or recruiting companies that might be smaller but more robust in certain areas. But yeah, for us, it was definitely just word of mouth, talking to other firm owners, just learning what works best. Um, that would be my recommendation for sure.
Perfect. Tammy, how did that work for you as you were kind of going through your first set of hires with your offshore team? How did you vet or determine the right agency?
We just had interviews with multiple firms that, using LinkedIn, and people were reaching out to me constantly. So I was just going through their profiles on LinkedIn, going to their websites, looking at what do they do. And essentially it was just my gut, picking the one that felt right to me. And the company that we're currently working with, what I like best about them is we send them a job description and they provide us with several candidates. And it's just like an employee, which I like. So they feel a part of our team. They're not treated any differently. They're just maybe on a different time zone, but they're receiving the same training that everyone, our US based employees are as well. But I just like the process of interviewing people that are going to come and work with us.
Brilliant, brilliant. Um, Dave, I don't know exactly how to ask you this because you kind of just built your own, but I'm curious. When do you have any different process for hiring direct for your Filipino staff versus your onshore staff? Have you found anything to help vet talent overseas? I imagine you're hiring on an individual basis.
Yeah, we're hiring directly in the Philippines, and it what we really look for is either US based experience or kind of a fresh slate of someone who is able and willing to learn quickly. Because we found that a lot of the kind of long time experience in a local accounting firm or a accounting department hasn't really translated super well to working in a remote environment for a US company in the way we do things. So we are preferred actually as entry level out of college. We'll hire new grads and we'll train them from the beginning. And a lot of times they're very tech forward and eager and quick to learn. And then we also hire experienced people who have worked with other US or international type companies. So we've had the most success there. And I would also say for vetting and like an agency to work with, look at and kind of goes back to what Laurence was saying, look at the model that you want to operate under and what's your level of comfort with operating overseas. If you're super comfortable, you've done it before, you know how to navigate cultures and performance from on the other side of the world and time zones and all that, then it may work to hire someone directly and or hire contractors or use an agency just to place someone with you. But if you want more support and more help with the liaison with the culture and managing performance and on-site training and kind of building the culture and team there, then you might want a process that has a little more robust support. So one factor to consider as you're looking.
Great, great, great. Well, this is a natural segue. This will be our final one before I open up Q&A. So keep loading up. I'm seeing good questions already, so keep typing them in. I'm really excited about some of the questions that are coming in. But this was a good springboard for what strategies have you found most effective for integrating offshore talent seamlessly into your firm's culture and ensuring consistent quality, especially in client-facing roles. So this is an assumptive, like you have them in client-facing roles. Tammy, do you want to kick this one off?
Sure. Um, so as I mentioned before, we try to treat them exactly like all of our employees here in the States. They go through the same onboarding, the same training, they use the same systems, and we don't have a lot of, verbal communication. It's mainly email. So, they have their own email account, and I'm aware of what's being sent to every client. So we make sure they feel comfortable, we feel comfortable before they start communicating with any of our clients. But then after that, they're just considered our team, and that makes one feel better about the situation, and it just makes it easier on everyone. So we've managed to make it pretty seamless. They're just part of our team, and that's just how it is.
And they're not on client calls, but they're emailing clients directly. Did I get that correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, great. Amanda, how has that worked for you all?
Yeah, same. We're the same, Tammy. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, we definitely have our Philippine team members fully integrated here at Badger CPA. They go through the same onboarding, same training and development. They have the same promotion paths, the same bonus schedules, same performance review schedules. We actually do have all of our Philippine team members client facing. We have all of them in client meetings, interacting via email, via telephone. So we do training upfront about communication expectations and just, yeah, making sure cameras are on, making sure that everyone looks professional, we have the virtual backgrounds, so everyone looks similar. So we talk about professional expectations and appearance. But yes, everyone is fully integrated. We have our we actually stopped using the word employee because we wanted everyone to just be team members, whether you're a contractor, whether you're stateside or in the Philippines. And we have everyone on all of our internal like team meetings. We have like quarterly team touch points. We have different social. We're all virtual, so it makes it easier. We do have a San Antonio office, but we typically are all working remotely. So it doesn't feel any different. You just happen to be on the other side of the world. We all have the same virtual background, and so don't feel different. They do work our night shift, so the hours line up. We do have a modified night shift for like a 10-year benefit that we offer, but that doesn't happen until the 2-year anniversary. But yes, firm culture is definitely important. We talk a lot about our core values and have a really high standard for living those core values out on a day-to-day basis, and just a high accountability culture.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. Somebody had the question. Let me open it up. Where are you, Mike? Here we go. How do you find your clients responding or feeling about their work being outsourced, or do they not know? Dave, what does that look like from your perspective?
I've been using global team members for probably 13, actually almost 15 years now. And I've never had a client express any concern. They might ask about it and ask about security or how does it work or whatever, but I've never had a client not want to work with us because of it. So it's really been for us a non-issue. We don't necessarily like plaster it on our homepage, but we also don't hide it either. It's just they're just part of the team.
Whoever wants to take it up from there. Tammy, do you
Same.
same?
Yeah, we've had no issues.
I mean, I think to add to it, a lot of firms, I think that's one of the big concerns, right? Is okay, what are my clients going to think, right? There's a lot of things that come up with the tax disclosures and things like that. Really, if it's implemented properly in a way that these are my team members, if you make a huge deal about it, somebody's probably gonna more likely step up and ask more questions in a lot of cases. And it's not about hiding it, but I've seen firms go well above and beyond disclosing and saying, hey, listen, this is exactly what we're doing. But by raising that, you almost seem like you're doing something wrong in a lot of cases, and the way that different partners in the firm or employees then bring it up, if they don't feel fully comfortable with it themselves, it can come off negatively to your clients, right? So really you've got to win over your team internally in a lot of cases to make sure that they understand exactly why you're doing it, right? That you've gone through all the due diligence checks. It's no different than you working with team members here in the US in a lot of cases. But as long as you do the required disclosure, right, there's no reason why you should bring extra attention to it in a lot of cases. But I see firms going as far as putting their team members internationally on their websites in a lot of cases too. But it just depends on how, if they're not going to be interacting with clients, there's not necessarily a need to do that in a lot of cases as well. So again, it depends on that model of what you want to do. If you're treating them like employees, I would also, and you have your employees on your website, you should really have your team members globally on your website as well.
You brought up an interesting point, so I'm going to go off script a little bit, so bear with me. But I was having lunch with a firm owner a while back, and they hadn't started offshoring yet, and there was a big concern that when they did, the staff onshore would feel very threatened. Like, oh, it's only a matter of time before we're gone if they're starting to offshore. Tammy, Amanda, Dave, did that happen with your team at all, or has it been so ingrained from day one that the team didn't feel that? Did any of y'all have to overcome any of that nervousness, I guess, when you started offshoring?
We didn't. I think our team was just so excited to have help that they didn't care where they were as long as they could come in and work and integrate within our current
Yeah.
systems and be a part of our team. They don't really care because we're fully remote. So we're all over the place anyway. So it's normal to us.
Got it. So I think the more yeah, I guess if you're struggling with capacity and you're like, I think we have an answer, right? Then everyone's gonna, Amanda, was that your experience as well?
Yes, and I think it really is the responsibility of the business owners and leadership team in how they communicate to the US team members ahead of time, and just explaining that it's to grow the firm, to help to perhaps delegate transactional accounting work, help to grow the firm's vision and just accomplishing the goals set. I think there's definitely opportunity on both the US side and the Philippines side, or whatever country you work with, to do cultural training. We've done that where we've trained our US managers, controllers on some just Philippine culture just to be aware of, and vice versa, training our Philippine team on US culture, because or Australian culture, or wherever you're, or Pakistan, or I saw a few other countries, Switzerland, just helping both sides of the team know just some cultural differences. Every culture, even within the United States, north, south, east, west, we're going to have different cultural differences that make it a little bit of a challenge to work with one another. And so that's where communication comes in.
Speaking of which, oh, sorry, go ahead, Dave.
Well, like I say, my experience is similar. We had, I think, 5 people before I hired the first US person, so it's always been part of what we do. But so we haven't had like overt resistance to it, but we've had kind of passive resistance in especially hourly employees, because we want to push as much work to the Philippines team as we can. And if we have the short-term perception that hourly employee has less hours if they give up some of their work, if we don't communicate correctly, I think Amanda, you may have said something similar. Like, we want to communicate their career path. So what happens if you work, have fewer transactional hours because you delegated your work? That opens up so much more high value work for the future. So it's just helping them, training on the big picture and the kind of future career path that makes it possible by delegating.
Yeah, fantastic. I have there's some version of this that's come up a couple times, and we talked about it a little bit, but I'm curious, what tactically do you do to keep communication really clear? Like, is it they're part of a daily huddle, or there's daily email updates, or you're using your workflow system? Like, what did you do to help make sure that, if you're uh not in the office with them? I know we have mainly virtual firms on here, but like, it's different being in a different time zone, and if they're not working US based hours, what have you learned tactically to keep everybody on the same page and accountable for the client work? Um, Amanda, do you wanna take this one first?
Yeah, we definitely have not perfected that, but I can share what we've tried. Yeah, I mean, we all use Microsoft software, and so we're on Teams all day long, just texting back and forth. And then also in our workflow system, just making sure that everything has a team member assigned, the due date, who's doing what when, expectations with utilization. I think the best way that we do that is in our quarterly team touch point, where the leadership team presents the upcoming quarterly rocks and vision and just where we're going that quarter and how we did last quarter. Any changes to IT or HR changes, just communicating big things like that with everybody on the call. So I think just helping everyone just feel a part of the team and creating that transparency. We definitely don't have it perfect, but I think yeah, over communication is key.
Yeah, wonderful. Tammy, what's been your experience in that regard? And tactical suggestions you have?
We so we use Jetpack workflow, which integrates everyone, no matter where you are. So we assign tasks and jobs using that workflow. We also use Teams, and everyone in our company has one-on-ones with me or a supervisor every other week. So that would apply to the folks here and the folks offshore. So they're understanding our mission, our vision, what's happening, what's changing, and then I get to hear their side of it as well. So we're trying to keep that communication ongoing, and they see their path within our company, just like anyone else would. And I think that's the key is you want everyone to feel the same, no matter where they're located. And so that's what we try to just implement within our firm, but we haven't had issues with communication. Our guys come in 4 hours before we do, so we just are very clear of, we make sure they have work to do when we're not there, and then we have 4 hours to work with them. So, you know, it's the communication, and that's the biggest part of making it work.
Yeah, and I think that 4-hour overlap is really beneficial to getting that team ingrained. Um, I had a quick follow-up for you,
Definitely.
Tammy, before um, we moved on, but can you quickly articulate that one-on-one agenda? So you're meeting with everybody bi-weekly. I know this is both for onshore as well as offshore, but what does that typical agenda look like when you are, or your supervisor is meeting with a team member in those one-on-ones? How long are they? What are you asking them? What's the format?
They're usually between 30 to 45 minutes, and the questions may change depending on what's happening in the company or issues that I may have seen within them that I want to discuss and bring up. But it's, what's your win for the last 2 weeks? What can management do to help you? What are you struggling with? So it's just continuing to open up that communication with everyone. And
Yeah,
it seems to work because they feel heard, and that's
perfect.
what matters.
Lawrence, did you want to add to it?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, like, the one-on-ones are so good and necessary, really, as well, just culturally. A lot of in India and the Philippines, a lot of people don't like to necessarily speak up in group settings in a lot of cases. They feel like they're stepping on the toes of their seniors in some senses. So it's very important to have those one-on-ones, right? To grow that relationship and to get them to feel more comfortable, and they generally will open up a lot more, right? And they'll start bringing up when there are concerns, right? I've been in ample situations where somebody in the room like really needs to step up and say something and they just wouldn't, right? And then maybe they'll go back, like if they're with a BPO, they'll maybe go and talk to their internal manager rather than bringing it up to you, who in some cases to them is the client rather than their manager, right? So they're sort of on a balance between two teams in some senses too. So you've got to really, if you want them to be like your employees, you've got to spend that time, to really get them on board with you, because otherwise it can be confusing for some of them, especially if they're in that BPO setting.
Yeah, that's a great point. They don't want to upset the client. You have to remember you are the client. And so if there is an issue, they might go to their home base, talk to their manager, and then maybe it gets worked out, maybe it stays there, maybe they find ways to communicate it back to the client, but it's an inefficient communication process when you start playing telephone between those. That's a great call out. Dave, in your experience, what have you found to be those tactical communication touch points that help keep the team aligned and accountable across the board?
Yeah, it's pretty similar, but to what everybody else has shared. We have one or two Philippines team members for every one of our client managers, our primary client contact. So it doesn't always work out perfectly, but we attempt to line the client assignments so they're always working together. And then it's almost like a supervisory relationship, and they're having, like Tammy said, having one-on-ones every week or two, and intentionally not just tactical, but also getting to know them, getting to know them as people. Because it's easy to, especially when you're mostly communicating remotely with a different culture, it's easy to kind of default into seeing them as kind of faceless people on the other side of the world. But it's really helpful to get to know their personalities and interests um, and that. One thing we learned, a really important lesson early on, is how important, at least culturally for the Philippines, it is to have a local liaison. Because even though we had these one-on-one relationships between our US and Philippines team, that never surfaces everything. If there's some kind of concern, we often find that they're very hesitant to bring up any concerns. But if we have a local manager who can help bridge that gap, especially someone more experienced and more almost like a third party, then it really helps to mediate any concerns or anything that's coming up. Because we've had things early on before we had a lot of local infrastructure. We had things fester for weeks and months, and we find out, and then somebody leave, and we find out why they left, and it would have been something super easy to solve months ago, but we just they didn't feel comfortable bringing it up. So.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. I'm curious. Somebody typed in and they said, "How do you determine?" I'll just read it verbatim and then we can unpack it. How do you determine experience level credentials of outsourced accountants abroad despite what is being sold? So, the way I interpret this is, I want a senior, tax preparer, and somebody says they have a senior for me, but how do I really know? How do I really know that they can do the work before getting them fully integrated? I'm a vendor. I know, vendors can sometimes oversell things, whether in software and services. And so how do you know that but in software you get a 2-week free trial. What does that look like in terms of all the vetting process that goes in offshoring? Laurence, do you want to start with this one? And then we might actually pass this the whole way around again.
Yeah, so I mean, from being in doing this and being on the vendor side as well, and more so in India, right, from that expectation setting with firms as to how an experience level translates in a lot of cases. I always work on the basis, like rule of thumb, there's probably about a 2 years difference, right, between the level of experience, right? And obviously, if you get a fresher compared to a US fresher, they're going to be very similar, right? But as they start to get more experienced, generally there becomes a bit of a gap in the knowledge. And there's a few reasons for that, right? There's outsourcing firms have typically been built on volume based, right? Which means that managers are not managing 5 or 6 people like they would here in the US. They're actually managing 15 to 20 people in a lot of cases and having multiple team leaders and things like that, which people take a lot of time out of your day, right, in to do that people management aspect. So it means that they can't focus as much time on some of the higher level work. There's also, going into that, like clients and firms in the US weren't necessarily providing that high level work, right, for years and years like they would here and provide that training. In the past few years, there's been a much bigger investment from firms to treat their global teams like their own teams, right? Especially like we've seen it with the big four and the larger firms, but smaller firms have started doing it more so in the more recent years, right? So there is a gap, right? So my big thing is testing, right? A lot of the times, like these international team members are very used to a more lengthy interview process in some sense, so they are quite willing to do a test. I think we have now, because of the scarcity of accountants available, we've pushed away from doing testing and things because we don't want to risk losing them in a lot of cases. However, by doing some tests, I think there's like account tests out there and there's things that you can put together yourselves. But putting together a structured test to get a feel for their knowledge is a super helpful way. And I feel like a lot of outsourcing BPOs and or employer of records will happily implement those types of things if you provide that to them, if they don't already have something similar in place. But I like for you to give it because then you know exactly what you want back and where you can balance them out from an education perspective.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Tammy, what's been your experience with vetting to making sure that the person that they're recommending can really do the job?
So the interview process with our offshore team is exactly like our onshore team. They're meeting with me and multiple members of our team. It down to usually 2 or 3 people, and they're given a skills test, which we've designed specifically for the work that we're hiring for. And so we're just looking to, they can do what ask them to do.
Perfect. Now, Amanda, in your case, your model's a little bit different than Tammy's in that you're working with the parent company, and we'll go through everybody's offshoring resource, here in a couple minutes, so everybody knows who everybody's using. If they have questions about them, you can always follow up with individuals or the companies directly. But your model's a little bit different, where they have a lot of talent in the Philippines, I believe. And so, did you rely on their test? Did you bring your own test? I'd be curious to see how that worked for you all.
Sure. Yes. So we're currently working with 3 BPOs, but the primary one is TOA Global, and they have a great screening process where they help to vet the candidates, making sure that they have the language, written and verbal skills, but also some of the accounting skills as well. And then once they get to us, I meet with them and have what we call a core value interview, where I'm sharing our core values, talking about the culture, the firm culture, and then asking specific targeted questions to get a feel for if they have those core values. And if they pass that first core value interview, then I would send them a couple of things. We've also created a case study with like a P&L balance sheet questions. How would you respond? How would you present this to the client kind of questions? And then we have 2 different accounting assessments that are online. But even with those, like Chat GPT, I mean, how can you trust the results? And so we do look at the results from those plus a personality assessment. But then if they do well, then we still have what we call a technical interview, where they're meeting with their potential supervisor and maybe one of our accounting directors, where technical accounting questions are asked live, so that they can, I mean, I guess you can still quickly Google or Chat GPT a question, but hopefully live. We're actually hoping to implement where we could even do a screen share and have them, okay, you say you're QBO certified, show me where you would go to find this report, or how would you compare, like create a report to compare quarters, or just different things to really kind of like go a little bit beyond, okay, we want to trust you, but show me what you know. Because we have had some situations where even stateside, where you hire someone, it actually is not what was sold, what they spoke about their experience. So there is a little bit of trust that has to be extended anytime you hire somebody. And so I don't think it's a perfect like, oh well, this test is going to really weed out people that we don't want. So there's trial and error. We've changed our process. We're working with the BPOs to improve different areas in that regard. But overall, the vetting that TOA Global has done has definitely brought quality candidates and helped us at least start with a baseline, and then we go from there.
I love it. I love it. Well, final question, and then we'll go through, how people can not only connect with you all, but then, again, talk about the offshore partner or partners you may be working with. But I couldn't, bring up this topic without somebody asking security, of course. So, I'm curious. We'll end with the security question. How do you ensure that client books are safe and secure? Somebody's asking, like, well, okay, I could see you might be using QB Online. Are there other things? We talked about Teams, but how do you think about access control and security control? As you go into your offshore journey. Dave, do you want to kick this one off for us?
Yeah, I don't see it much different at all than the US. There's the IRS disclosures, which is an important part of it from a client compliance perspective. But from the actual mechanics, it's really not much different. We have a combination. Most people are in office, and so we have our in-office, firewalls and clean rooms and all those kind of things that are standard for an in-office setting. We also have quite a few people who are remote, and we have the same protocols for our remote team in the US. We require VPNs to access certain systems that are locked down to the VPN. We have always have company-owned computers without admin access, and then all the anti-malware and all the security software on the devices. So again, really no different. I think the trust level, I would say, is the same, even better maybe than in the US. In the Philippines, they have a pretty robust background checks and a culture of integrity and honesty. So I don't have really any concerns from that perspective.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I know we're wrapping up here. We have a couple minutes. Let's go around the room. People want to say, the offshoring partners they use, and then also folks want to reach out to you all, say thank you, have follow-up questions. Let's do that. Tammy, how about you kick it off first, then we'll go Amanda, Dave, Laurence.
We're currently working with a company out of India, but they also have teams in the Philippines called Integrity. And we've been super pleased with them. Their vetting processes, their security are just incredible. Very, very pleased with them. And I can be reached at probably the easiest way is myghostcrew.com. And that's the best way to find me.
I love it. I love it. Amanda, how about you?
Yeah, so we primarily use TOA Global, but we do have two other BPOs that we work with as well, Cloud Accountant Staffing and Guided Outsourcing. We've actually talked with Nimble as well. But yeah, so we've been very pleased with all three. Most of our team members are with TOA Global. I would be happy to share or answer any more questions. You can email me we have our website, badgercpa.com. My email is amanda.owens at badgercpa.com.
Yeah, fantastic. Dave, how about you?
Yeah, so we are our own customer. So Nimble Staffing is where all of our people come from. And you can check us out at trustnimble.com. And you can look me up on LinkedIn as well. Just search Dave Olsen Nimble, it should come up. So.
And it works. I think that's how we got connected. Laurence, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, you can go on my website, which is impact-global.co, or you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm always on there from that perspective. So obviously, I do due diligence on outsourcing firms sort of around the world. So probably about 80 plus I've already done it on in a lot of cases. So again, if people want to explore different options and understand the questions, there's also, you can go to the AICPA website. Like I published a paper there that has, again, it's like the best practices and it gives you some guidance as to where even to get started. So the big thing is I'm happy to be a resource wherever needed.
Brilliant. I highly encourage for people live today or watching the recording, reach out, get connected with these folks. I find so much practicality by talking to people that are living this out every single day. So please take them up on their offer, connect with them on LinkedIn, message them, go to their website. Laurence, Dave, Amanda, Tammy, I appreciate your time. I know our audience does as well. Everybody, that wraps up today's panel. If you enjoyed it, please send us a note. My personal email is david@jetpackworkflow.com. If you got any value out of this, shoot me a note. If you didn't get any value out of it, shoot me a note and tell me why. But I think we had a great discussion here today. And again, thank you to the panelists for being on, and everybody enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.